Hello, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Mindful Mastery. Today, we are diving into the shadow and specifically integrating the shadow. In the last episode, we covered shame spirals and negative self-image, but after watching it back, I realized that this video only really covered one aspect of this. So today, I want to dive deeper into the shadow and how to integrate it, because this is such integral work that can help you to get over a negative self-image. It can help you to become more confident and clear in your life and free up a lot of energy that's used to repress aspects of ourselves. So if you're not familiar with the term the shadow, it was coined by Carl Jung, and he uses this term to describe the aspects of ourselves that we repress. Now, there's a great book on this by Robert Bly called A Little Book on the Human Shadow. It's a short one, it's just a little guy, but there is a lot in here. This is a very dense book that explains the shadow and how to work with it, how to integrate it. In the book, he calls it eating the shadow. So in this book, Robert Bly calls the shadow the long bag we drag behind us. The long bag we drag behind us. And this long bag is filled with all of the aspects of our personality that we've repressed and deemed undesirable. And a lot of our self-loathing and our negative self-image comes from that long bag that we drag behind us. It comes from all of these repressed aspects of our personality that we've put in the bag over the years. And it starts so early. Before we can even speak, we start to put aspects of ourselves in the bag. So like I mentioned before, we can be pleasing to our parents and caregivers so that we can survive. And then as we grow up, we start to put more and more aspects of ourselves in the bag because of the feedback that we get from different people in our home life. Then going through school, we learn more and more things about ourselves that are not pleasing to the people around us. We put more and more in the bag. Then we leave school, we get out into the real world, and we put more and more of ourselves in the bag. And over time, that bag gets to be miles long and super heavy and actually draining to drag around. And if we don't do the work to integrate these parts of our shadows, they'll just continue to drag us down, drain our energy, and eventually start to cause problems for us in our lives. Because as Robert puts it in this book, every part of our personality that we do not love will become hostile to us. Because every part of our personality that we put away in this bag, this long shadow bag behind us, just wants to be seen and heard and honored. And when we don't see and hear and honor these parts of ourselves, they'll start to get louder because they want to be seen and heard and honored. And that can come out in a multitude of different ways, because depending on where we grew up, the culture we grew up in, the kind of school we went to, the kinds of experiences that we've had in life, the kinds of religious upbringings we had, the kind of culture that our society has, we will put different things in the bag. And that could be our anger, our jealousy, our sexuality, our emotions, just general emotions. There are so many different things that we can repress and push away because that's kind of what we're shown. And we have our own personal shadow, but we also have familial shadows, we have cultural shadows, we have national shadows, and we have global shadows. But let's just focus on the personal shadow for now, because when we do our own shadow work, when we learn to integrate these parts of ourselves that we have repressed, it changes the way that we show up in the world, and it starts to change our interpersonal relationships, and it can create a ripple effect in the world around us. Now, if we come back to this quote, every part of our personality that we do not love will become hostile to us. I actually got to witness this in a show that I was watching last night. I don't know if any of you have seen the show called Alone. I'm obsessed. But this show is a survival show where people are dropped off. Right now in this season, they're dropped off close to the Arctic Circle. And they are dropped off completely alone with their survival gear and also with a big case of camera gear because they're actually filming themselves. There's no camera crew on site with them. They are completely alone. And while it's framed as a survival show, this show is so fascinating because you get to see what happens to different people mentally when they're alone and in this kind of survival situation. Now, the episode I watched last night was so fascinating because it was a blatant example of this one man's shadow, the things that he had repressed coming to the forefront and eventually taking him out of the show. So this man, I won't say his name in case you're watching the show, but this man is a very linear thinker. He was into martial arts and things like that. And throughout the episodes leading up to last night, he was actually talking about how he doesn't let himself get consumed by emotions. He pushes it down, pushes it away, and doesn't let himself feel it. And that's actually how he's been teaching his kids to deal with emotions as well, teaching them that, those big emotions, it's not healthy to express like that. So you need to just push it down and push it away. And he actually said these words in the episodes because that's what he believed to be true. Now, this man is a very skilled survivalist. He built an awesome shelter. He was getting himself food. He was getting himself water. He was doing all the things to keep his body alive. But after 8 days in the wild alone, with nothing to distract him, no work, no extracurricular activities, none of his family was around him, he was completely alone. And after 8 days, he was completely overrun with emotions, completely absorbed, couldn't control his mind, and was just completely overwhelmed by all of his emotions because all of these emotions that he had repressed for so many years, his entire lifetime, it sounds like, all bubbled to the surface because there was nothing there to distract him anymore. So it all came to the surface. He started feeling all of these emotions. He said that he was crying every single day and couldn't control his mind. His mind was just spinning with all of these memories and all of these feelings and all of these thoughts that he had pushed down for so long. And he ended up tapping out of the competition because he was so overwhelmed by all of these things that he had repressed and not honored and not witnessed. See, when we repress all of these aspects of ourselves, these feelings, these memories, we think that we're just going to put it away in a closet and never have to deal with it again, but they will always come up. They'll leak out in different ways. Emotions will leak out in passive aggressiveness or anger or frustration or just a deep depression, because that's the only way that our shadow and those aspects of our subconscious know to make us aware that there's something there to deal with. And if you bring it back to Robert Bly's analogy of the long bag that we drag behind us, you can keep putting stuff in that bag all you want, but the more you put in there, the heavier that bag gets. Even if you don't want to look at it anymore, the reality is that you're still dragging it around. You're still pulling it with you, and you're still exerting energy to pull that bag around and not look at it. So integrating your shadow and doing that shadow work is beginning to take things out of that bag and look at them and honor them and witness them. And when we do that, it allows that part of us to come out of the bag and meld itself back into our body. So rather than pushing it away, it becomes a part of us, an integrated part of us. And when that happens, that bag becomes lighter. And it frees up this stored energy that we were using to repress it. And now we have this extra energy that we can use towards something productive or creative or whatever we want to do with our lives. And now this shadow work is not fun. And some psychologists term shadow work as eating the shadow. And I kind of like this analogy because it's kind of what you're doing. Rather than just taking it out and looking at it, you're actually ingesting it, re-ingesting this part of yourself that you had taken out and shoved away. You're reintegrating this part of yourself. And it's not always bad. Sometimes, like I mentioned in my last video, we'll take our exuberance and put it in the bag because that was deemed as too much. So now when we bring that exuberance back and integrate it back into ourselves, we've got so much energy. Woo! We're doing life again. Feeling excited again. So it's the shadow, and this long bag that we drag behind us isn't all bad. It's just the parts of us that we've repressed and shoved away and deemed undesirable. And it can be on kind of both ends of the spectrum. It can be our wildness. It can be our intensity. It can be our warrior spirit. It can be our anger. It can be jealousy. It can be our scrappiness. It can be our excitement. It can be so many different things. And I really do believe that a lot of our mental health problems stem from all of these things that we've repressed about ourselves. So when we can bring those aspects of ourselves into the light of awareness and honor them, eat them, re-ingest them, integrate them in a way that works for us here and now, realize that we are multidimensional beings with so many aspects to our personality, it almost automatically starts to adjust our self-image and our self-confidence. Because if we really look at our insecurities, they're usually based on something that we've repressed. And when we can integrate that part of ourselves and honor it, bring awareness to it, then the insecurity can kind of just vanish because we have become intimate with that part of ourselves. We're no longer pushing it away. It's a part of us again. And we're owning it. I should say that. We're owning that part of ourselves. So there's nothing to be insecure about on that part when you own that part of yourself and bring it back into the fold, bring it back into your being, and bring it into the light of awareness. And this eating your shadow, this integrating your shadow, this shadow work is a constant process. It's not a one and done kind of thing. Like you go to a weekend session and you do some shadow work and you're like, you're good, you're done. It's a constant process, and it's not just a mental process either. It's very much a visceral experience in your body. You are allowing yourself to experience and feel things that you haven't allowed yourself to experience and feel before. And it's important when you're feeling and experiencing things that you haven't allowed yourself to feel and experience before, that you are discerning in what you do with this energy, because feeling and experiencing is very different from expressing. So take anger, for instance. If you have not allowed yourself to feel and experience anger before, that's something that you had repressed, and suddenly you're allowing yourself to feel and experience anger in your body, you can feel it in your body. You can feel it churning around, but you don't necessarily have to express it outwardly. Just a simple act of allowing yourself to feel that anger in your body without shoving it away is part of shadow work. It's part of this healing process, this integration process. Just knowing that, oh, okay, I can feel anger in my body and I don't have to shove it away and I don't have to express it. It's kind of this middle ground, this middle path of just integrating this energy in your body. It's not a bad thing. Anger is not a bad thing, but some ways that we express anger can be harmful. So finding ways to just feel that energy and channel it. Maybe it's just stomping your feet on the ground and allowing it to just move through your body that way. Physically shaking. Things like that can help you to feel this energy and then move it through your body in a way that's not harmful to yourself or to others. And this can work with pretty much anything else that we've been suppressing and not allowing ourselves to feel. Basically, you're taking that feeling, that experience, that aspect of your personality, and taking it back inside your body so that it's no longer not you. See, when we take things and we repress it and we put it in the bag, we're externalizing these parts of ourselves and making it not us. So when we eat and integrate the shadow, we're taking it out of the bag and putting it back into our body, integrating it back into us as part of us. So going back to anger isn't necessarily a bad thing. Anger can show us where our boundaries have been crossed. And so we can use that anger as fuel to stand up for ourselves in a firm and assertive, but still compassionate way, right? This is how we start to integrate these parts of ourselves that we've repressed, but do it in a grounded, healthy way that is not destructive to ourselves or others. So how do we start to become aware of what is in our shadow or in that long bag that we're dragging behind us? To become aware of the things, feelings, experiences that you've repressed, take note of the things that you judge in other people, particularly if you get a little bit obsessive about it and wanting to just focus on it and, bash it, kind of talk about it all the time, things like that. If you feel a really big emotional charge towards something that someone is doing, there is a chance that that might be reflecting back to you something that you've repressed. So I know, for instance, we'll just talk about North America. Sexuality is very highly repressed. So if you were to see someone like a Marilyn Monroe, for instance, and immediately feel this aversion to her sensuality, to the way that she dresses, to her femininity, and you just keep focused on it, it might be an indication that maybe you've repressed your femininity, maybe you've repressed your sensuality, maybe you've repressed that kind of flowy nature in yourself, and seeing it in someone else brings that up in you because you know that that's a part of yourself that you want to express, but haven't allowed yourself to express or haven't been allowed to express that. And we can take it kind of to the other spectrum of things as well. Say like a movie like 300, where You see a guy like Gerard Butler's character who's going out there and fighting, and you're uncomfortable with his physique or his warrior spirit or his anger or things like that. It could be that maybe you've repressed your own masculine energy. We all have masculine and feminine aspects to ourselves. So maybe you've repressed your own masculine. Maybe you've repressed your warrior spirit, your assertiveness, your anger, your protector. Maybe you've repressed your own protector. And so that movie, seeing that so overtly, brings it out in you. If we're aware, we are constantly being shown aspects of ourselves that we've repressed in our outer world. The outside always mirrors the inside. So if we've got a lot of stuff repressed, we're going to be angry and frustrated with a lot of things in the world. And it's giving us an opportunity to look at that aspect, that part that's in the bag, see it, witness it, eat it, integrate it, and allow ourselves to be more of a full, as Robert puts it, a 360-degree expression of our energy. We've been kind of trained to only focus on the good, the light, the nice, and repress all of the things that are not deemed to be light or nice or good. But again, that's going to be very different for different people, different towns, different families, different cultures, different societies, different nations. But these shadow repressed aspects of us aren't necessarily bad or wrong. They're part of being human. And we have a choice every day whether we will act on these shadow aspects or act on our light aspects. And I struggle with even just putting them in such a container of duality, but for the sake of this talk, let's just do that. So bringing it back to that example of the anger, the fact that you feel anger isn't wrong. We all feel anger here and there. It's important to feel anger sometimes. Where it can become harmful is in how we choose to express that anger. So finding healthy ways to move these energies through our bodies is so important. So whether that's, moving your body, shaking, stomping, getting some exercise, whether it's speaking it out loud, whether it's writing it down, finding ways to integrate these energies, move them through our bodies, and learn how to be with them is such powerful work. And when you can own your shadow and your light and everything in between, it frees up so much energy because you're not spending that energy repressing these parts of yourself anymore. It starts to create a feeling of wholeness and of self-respect and of confidence because you're owning every part of you. The more of these parts of yourself that you own and you integrate, the more confident you do become, because there's fewer things that people can say to you that will trigger you because you own and you accept these parts of yourself. And you start to move away from such a two-pronged, dualistic view of yourself, of your mind, of your emotions, of your body, and you come into more of a multi-dimensional view and energy because you're integrating both sides of you and your humanity and your human experience. And when that happens, the negative views that you have of yourself start to just disappear because you're not repressing so much of yourself anymore. You're owning it. You're integrating it. You're accepting it as a part of you. And when you do that, you bring compassion into yourself that just melts the ice. So I'm going to leave it there for today. There was a lot in this talk. Thanks for sharing it with someone you think this might resonate with. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button on the way out if this did resonate for you. Subscribe to the channel and the podcast for more talks like this, and I will see you in the next one. Have a beautiful day.